Here are the note cards I'll be using throughout my speech. They've got 1 to 3 word sentences on them that'll help me guide me through. Only when the last tree has died, and the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish has been caught will we realize we cannot eat money. Indian proverb. Since the 1830s, climate change has affected the world in drastic ways. And some of these ways are increased temperatures, decrease in agricultural yield, and an increase in ocean acidification. When all this was brought to light by French mathematician Joseph Fourier, businesses actually did not go green. Instead, they thought, well, this problem is not going to affect me in my lifetime, so why should I worry about it? And unfortunately, that mindset dominated the business ideology. We often don't appreciate that climate change is a problem. We think we are just waiting for it to happen. Kafi Anan. Howdy, everybody. My name is Ross Mulhair, and I'm here to explain to you the effects behind global warming and how it's not something that is going to happen. It's something that's currently happening. Whenever you hear the phrase global warming, the thought that comes to your head is temperature increase. And while you're not entirely wrong, it's a little bit more complicated than that. You see, temperature increase comes from something known as the greenhouse effect. And that is when the sun's energy comes down towards the earth and reflects off the earth's surface, but greenhouse gases actually take that energy and reapply it back towards the earth, keeping the heat level, or maintaining a heat level all the way around the world. But when we do things like burn fossil fuels or do agriculture or land clearing, that increases the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, causing more sun energy to be re-radiated back towards the earth than normal. The way I like to think of it is that, let's say you have a balloon, and in order for a balloon to float, you have to fill it with air. But when you fill it with too much air, then the balloon pops. Now, when the world experiences a temperature increase, it won't explode, but when thinking about the drastic effects that come from climate change, the world will actually experience equivalent consequences. According to Bill Nye, when we release carbon, say by doing things like burning coal or driving an SUV, we all pay for that in the form of forest fires, floods, or crop failure. And if emissions aren't changed, or if the amount of emissions of greenhouse gases aren't changed, the average increase of temperature across the world is anywhere between 4 and 8 degrees, which is a lot and will drastically affect the farming industry. Which brings me to my second point. If you've ever grown a plant, or if you've ever looked at the grass outside, you could tell that these plants require very specific needs or very specific conditions in order to thrive. And when there are intense climate changes, these conditions can't be satisfied, which destroys their ability to produce a quality product. According to climatechange.chicago.org, when climate change is present, it disrupts the food availability, it disrupts the accessibility to food, and it tarnishes our ability to produce quality crops. And it does this, or for example, climate change does this whenever there's a projected increase in temperature, changes precipitation, and it changes the extreme weather effects, and it reduces the availability of water, which all result in a reduce in productivity. And whenever an extreme source of food is taken from society, what do you think happens? The answer is clear, because society is plunged into chaos. So without agriculture, the world is near hopeless. And farmers on ncbi.gov are saying agriculture is vulnerable to climate change and greenhouse gases. And farmers face pressures to adjust their agricultural systems to these weather changes. But when climate change and greenhouse gases are making these weather changes extreme, it is tough for them to keep up. So, it not only affects the farmers around the world, And it not only affects the land, it actually affects the sea as well, which brings me to my third point. Remember chemistry from high school, or remember it from last semester, or remember it from now at Texas A&M? Well, if you do, one thing that you should be familiar with is the pH scale, which gives us a representation of the acids and bases and how strong they are. According to NOAA.gov, the carbon dioxide has a natural quantity in the atmosphere, and when there is an excess amount in the atmosphere resulting from greenhouse gases and climate change, then that excess carbon dioxide goes into the water and it combines with the water to make carbonic acid, which itself isn't actually a extremely powerful acid, but when there's such a large quantity of it, it will decrease the average pH as a whole around the world. And when that happens, from a real statistic from real life, scientists over a 10 to 12 year period recorded the change in pH level in the ocean, and in that period the pH actually changed from 8.4 to 8.1, which, mind you, that's still basic, but that is an incredibly fast rate. And when taking that math from 8.4 to 8.1 in 10 to 12 years, expressed logarithmically, that is a 30% increase in acidity level, which is terrible for the wildlife in the ocean, as you can imagine. When an above natural quantity of carbon dioxide and water, well, not an above quantity of water, because water is what makes up the ocean. When there's an above natural quantity of carbon dioxide and carbonic acid, it severely harms the wildlife by decreasing the biodiversity. And when biodiversity decreases, it decreases the amount of resources that are available for humans. And the fisheries actually supply about 1 billion people across the world with their main source of protein, meaning fish is the main source of protein for 1 billion people worldwide. And when that is taken away, that will cause extreme effects towards society. And according to scientificamerican.com, fisheries are actually crying out for a worldwide level of change from the world's leading CO2 and greenhouse gas emitters. So we've been hearing about all these problems, but what does fixing them actually look like? Well, according to nationalgeographic.com, for example, improvements to energy efficiency, vehicle fuel economy, increased wind and solar usage, setting price on carbon, and protecting forests are all ways that we can change or stop climate change from affecting the world. We only just need to make it a priority, which is why I shared this information with you today. Thank you.